Chapter 1: The Nobel wakes in a cage. I woke to light that did not flicker. That was the first wrong thing. Light, in my experience, wavered. Fire breathed. Candles trembled. Even the sun was never this clean, this unwavering. This light was white and flat, pressing down on my eyelids like a command. Sound followed. A steady beeping. Mechanical. Impatient. I did not move at once. Panic is for men who lack information. I took inventory. I was lying flat. My back rested on something too smooth, too narrow. Air entered my lungs with effort but without pain. There was a weight on my left arm, a faint pressure at my wrist, something cold against the inside of my elbow. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was white, seamless. Panels fitted together with no ornament, no artistry, no reverence. It reminded me of a slaughterhouse, scrubbed clean after use. So he's awake. A voice. Female. Clothes. I turned my head slightly. A woman stood beside the bed, dressed in pale blue, her hair pulled tight. A thin screen glowed behind her, filled with lines and numbers that meant nothing to me yet. Another voice answered. Male. Older. Liam? Can you hear me? Liam. The name struck with the force of a blade. And then the memories arrived. Not gently, not in order. A flood of images tore through my mind, foreign and invasive. Crowded lecture halls. Small glowing rectangles held in hands. Noise without music. Laughter without joy. A young body slouched in chairs, fed on sugar and caffeine and distraction. A life lived without discipline. I inhaled sharply. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from disgust. This body was not mine. I knew that with absolute certainty. My name was Dean Hart. I had been born to stone walls and banners heavy with history. I had ruled men who bowed because they understood consequence. I had the court wrapped around my fingers, being the right hand of the king. Then, as I remembered, I was met with an accident. My carriage got flipped, and the last thing I remember is only darkness. And now I was here, in a cage made of glass and light. Liam? Do you know where you are? The man asked, louder this time. I looked at him. He wore white, not ceremonial, practical, stained faintly at the cuff. His posture suggested authority tempered by routine. He had asked his question with the tone of someone expecting confusion, fear, tears. I gave him none. This is a medical facility, I said. My voice surprised me. Younger, smoother, American, likely a hospital. I've been unconscious for several hours, possibly longer. My left arm has an intravenous line. The beeping is cardiac monitoring. The light indicates I am not in critical condition. Silence fell. The woman blinked. The man frowned. Do you remember your name? He asked. I considered lying. Then I decided against it. Liam, I said, testing it. The sound sat poorly in my mouth. Liam Hart. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. That's good. Do you remember what happened? Yes. I did not elaborate. I felt the doctor's eyes sharpen. He stepped closer, studying my face as though expecting cracks. Can you tell me what day it is? No. It's a no, because this body doesn't contain a track of time since it was already abandoned by the real owner. But I can estimate, judging by the technology present and the data from my memories, it is early in the academic term. I was found collapsed. Stress-induced syncope, exacerbated by sleep deprivation and stimulant overuse. The doctor asked then, You're a medical student, right? Yes. That at least belong to this body. And you're not feeling confused? I am feeling inconvenienced. He exchanged a look with the nurse. They expected hysteria, shock, disorientation, perhaps tears or laughter. What they received instead was a man assessing his surroundings as if they were temporary accommodations. The machine continued to beep. I watched its rhythm. Regular. Strong enough. This body was salvageable. The doctor asked more questions. Simple ones. I answered them efficiently. Motor function intact. Pupils reactive. No headache worth noting. Mild dehydration. When he finally left, the nurse lingered to adjust the 4. You gave us a scare, she said lightly. Try not to overdo it, okay? I met her eyes and nod. True. This body was mismanaged. That will not happen again. When I was alone, I closed my eyes and allowed the truth to settle. This world was loud and inelegant. It worshipped speed over mastery, convenience over control. Its people surrounded themselves with marvels and used them like children smashing toys they did not understand. Crude, efficient, a barbaric world pretending to be advanced. But it had rules, systems, hierarchies disguised as freedom, which meant it could be mastered. I flexed my fingers, feeling the unfamiliar lightness of youth, the weakness of an used muscle. I would correct that, slowly, methodically. I had ruled my dukedom by understanding men and never lowering myself to meet them. I would survive this one the same way. And if I had been placed here as punishment or test or joke of the gods, then so be it. A cage is still a structure, and structures can be claimed. Chapter 2. A personality that should not exist. The university was louder than the hospital. Not louder in sound alone, but in spirit. Noise without structure. Movement without direction. Conversations collided and dissolved just as quickly, leaving nothing behind. It reminded me of a market at dusk, just before it turned ugly. The buildings were modern. Clean lines. Glass, steel, concrete. They wanted to look intelligent. They did not feel it. I walked through the campus at a steady pace. People noticed, though not for the reasons they would have noticed Liam Hart before. According to the memories, Liam had never been quiet or invisible. He laughed loudly, spoke faster than he thought, and lived with an energy that pulled others in. Chaotic, yes, but not foolish. He knew which lines could be crossed and which would earn consequences. A social creature, instinctive and sharp in ways this world valued. What had changed was not presence. It was gravity. Liam's confidence had been restless, outward-facing. Mine was still, compressed. It did not seek reaction, and that unsettled people far more. Liam. I stopped. 3 students approached, familiar faces arranged in casual familiarity. Friends. The kind built on shared classes, late meals, and mutual tolerance. One of them smiled. Bro, you ghosted everyone. You alive? I am, I replied. The grin faltered just slightly. Another tilted his head. Okay. But what's with the tone? You sound like you're in a documentary. That's new, you usually say something unhinged by now. The third added. I studied them, their posture, their spacing, the way they spoke over one another without meaning to. Efficient bonding behavior, but sloppy. I needed time to think, I said. That, at least, was something Liam would have said. They relaxed a fraction. About? One asked. Everything. A beat passed. Yeah, that tracks, someone muttered. They laughed, expecting me to join in. I didn't. The absence of reaction landed harder than refusal. You good, though? The first one asked more carefully. You're not, like, planning something illegal, right? Not today. They stared. Then one of them snorted. Okay. That one was funny. It hadn't been a joke. Class? I prompted. Yeah. See you there. They drifted off, glancing back more than once. Not alarmed. Curious. As if something familiar had been rearranged in a way they couldn't name. That was a recurring theme. The lecture hall was designed to encourage informality. Tiered seating. Wide aisles. A central podium that placed the professor below the students, both physically and symbolically. A deliberate choice. I chose a seat near the front, not because I wished to be seen, but because distance dulled perception. If I was to understand this world, I needed clarity. When the professor entered, Liam's memories guided my response. A nod, not standing but attentive. Respect here was performed differently. I adjusted. The lecture began. The subject matter was familiar in essence, though wrapped in modern language. Diagrams projected onto a screen. Data pulled from sources I could access instantly with a device small enough to lose in one's palm. This world was easy to grab through Liam's memories, And to be honest, even Liam was a chaotic, free-spirited social creature. His knowledge on this was so good. I listened closely, parsing not only information but structure. This world loved efficiency, yet tolerated waste. It prized accessibility, yet drowned clarity in excess explanation. The professor was competent but cautious. He softened every assertion, as if afraid certainty might offend someone. When he made a mistake, I waited. He did not correct himself. So I did. "Professor," I said calmly, not raising my voice, "that model assumes a uniform response across subjects. The study you're referencing actually shows significant variance tied to environmental stressors." Silence rippled outward. The professor blinked. "And you are?" "Liam Hart." Recognition flickered. "Ah, yes, you're right. Thank you for the clarification." A few students turned fully in their seats now. Someone whispered, "Since when does Liam talk like that?" I ignored it. Correcting an error was not a challenge. It was maintenance. Between classes, I explored. Liam's phone, this glowing databases they used, unlocked with ease. Memories guided my hands, but my mind absorbed everything greedily. Search engines, academic databases, news feeds, algorithms that predicted interest with unsettling accuracy. Impressive. Also exploitable. I learned quickly which sources carried weight, which were noise, and which existed solely to provoke emotional reaction. This society functioned on information, yet rarely verified it. A dangerous imbalance. By midday, the attention had shifted. Not whispers now, but glances held too long. Conversations paused when I passed. Liam had always been noticeable. Now, people watched as if recalibrating where to place me. "Dude," someone from another class called out, half joking. "What happened to you?" I met his eyes. "Growth." He laughed, uncertain whether he was supposed to. The answer followed me like a rumor. It was crossing the central quad that I felt it. A gaze, not casual, not reactive, focused and deliberate, cutting through the noise of the crowd. I did not turn immediately. Glass reflected enough. He stood near the steps, posture relaxed in a way that suggested confidence earned, not assumed. Tall, broad-shouldered, the space around him bent subtly, students adjusting their paths without realizing why. His eyes were on me, not curious, measuring. I met his gaze through the reflection. He did not look away. Good. I continued forward without acknowledgement. If he wished to approach, he would do so openly. The pressure of his attention followed me inside, persistent but controlled. This world, like any other, had its hierarchies, its apex predators, its men who understood power without needing to name it. Liam Hart had always known who to provoke and who not to. I knew something else entirely, and for the first time since waking in this body, I felt a flicker of genuine interest. Chapter 3: The Offense. I learned his name before I learned his reputation. Jake Cross. It traveled in whispers, carried with a strange mix of excitement and warning. The way people spoke it told me everything I needed to know. Not admiration, anticipation. As if trouble were a spectacle worth watching, provided it happened to someone else. He was not difficult to identify. People adjusted their bodies around him instinctively. Shoulders angled away, voices lowered, laughter sharpened, becoming performative. Even those who disliked him wanted to be noticed by him, if only to survive the encounter unscathed. Power without accountability. A familiar disease. I observed without interest. The seminar room was smaller than the lecture hall, designed to encourage discussion. Tables arranged in a hollow square. No podium. No safe distance between speaker and listener. Poor design choice. Jake sat across from me. He lounged in his chair as if it were a throne he tolerated rather than respected. One arm hooked over the backrest, legs stretched wide, posture openly territorial. He occupied more space than necessary, and no one challenged it. When he spoke, the room oriented toward him. His answers were delivered with confidence, not precision. He spoke quickly, decisively, layering terminology until it sounded correct by sheer momentum. The professor nodded along, relieved to have someone else carry the discussion. I remained silent. Correction is not about eagerness. It is about timing. The discussion shifted to a case study. Jake leaned forward now, elbows on the table, voice lowering as if sharing something valuable. The conclusion's obvious, he said. Intervention caused the shift. You can see it clearly in the data. Several students murmured agreement. He smiled faintly, satisfied, and leaned back again. Silence followed. The professor inhaled. That's a solid interpretation. It was wrong. I spoke. That conclusion relies on an assumption the data doesn't support. The room snapped to attention. Jake's gaze locked onto me instantly. Sharp, alert, assessing threat. I continued calmly. You're treating correlation as causation. In the second trial, the variable you cited was controlled. The outcome still occurred. The silence thickened. The professor frowned. Is that so? Yes, appendix. Page 12. I said. Paper rustled. The sound was indecently loud. Jake straightened, chair legs scraping against the floor. You're mistaken, that dataset was revised, he said lightly. It wasn't. My voice did not change. The revision applies to a different cohort. Similar conditions. Different parameters. A pause. Jake laughed softly, but it held no humor. You sure about that? I met his eyes fully now. I am. The professor cleared his throat. He's correct, he said reluctantly. Good observation, Liam. Something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. No outburst. Just a subtle recalibration, like a room realizing too late that the temperature had dropped. Jake didn't move for several seconds. Then his smile returned, thinner now, controlled. Well, guess I'll reread that section, he said, clapping once. Jake's approach reminded me of someone from my real life. Someone so important, my rival, Adrian. We both were at equal footing with equal powers, commanding politics and military. But here, the difference between Jake and Liam is that Jake is all above elite student while Liam holding an ordinary middle-class reputation. Class resumed, but the discussion never recovered. Ice kept drifting between us. Tension hummed under every exchange. When it ended, people packed up quickly. No one lingered near Jake. No one except me. I felt him behind me before he spoke. You got a problem? The question was casual, almost friendly. I turned. He stood too close. Close enough to force a reaction. His height was intentional. His stance wide, blocking my path. He smelled faintly of cologne and heat. No, I said. Funny. Looked like you were trying to make me look stupid, he replied. I corrected an error. You could have done that privately. Yes. The single word landed between us like a dropped weight. His jaw tightened. So why didn't you? I looked at him openly. Because you were wrong, and you spoke publicly, I said. Students nearby slowed, pretending not to listen. Jake noticed. He always noticed an audience. His smile sharpened. You think you're smart? I know what I know. He stepped closer. His chest brushed mine deliberately, an attempt to trigger instinct, fear, submission. People like you don't last long if they forget their place. He said quietly. I did not step back. I did not tense. I simply looked at him, not defiantly, not challengingly, as if he were already beneath consideration. That unsettled him. His hand came up suddenly, gripping the front of my shirt. Not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to assert ownership. A warning disguised as restraint. Kneel, he said softly. Not a command meant to be obeyed. A test meant to break something inside me. The room froze. Every breath seemed loud. I looked down at his hand, then back into his eyes. Something flickered there. Not anger, recognition. Because what met his gaze was not fear. It was fire. Silent, cold, absolute. The kind that does not rush. The kind that does not need to prove itself. The kind that burns long after screams fade. For one heartbeat, his grip loosened. Not because I resisted, because he understood. I leaned in just enough that only he could hear me. If you touch me again, you will regret surviving it. I said calmly, no threat, no emphasis, statement of fact. Jake released me abruptly, as if burned. He stepped back, rolling his shoulders, smile returning by force. You're wild, careful. People might misunderstand you, he said. I hope they do. Our eyes held for another second. Then he turned and walked away. The space parted for him again, but the ease was gone. His stride was controlled now. Focused. Good. Men like him are most dangerous when bored. I gathered my things and left without haste. I had not sought conflict. I had simply refused to kneel. And in my world I ruled that alone was enough to start a war. Chapter 4. Predator versus Strategist. Jake did not retaliate immediately. That was how I knew he was dangerous. Men who confuse dominance with strength react loudly when challenged. They snap. They posture. They make spectacles of themselves and call it authority. Jake did none of that. He went quiet. He watched. For several days nothing happened. No remarks in class. No interruptions. No public attempts to undermine me. His absence was conspicuous. Silence, when used correctly, is never empty. It is preparation. The first test arrived disguised as friendliness. Hey, a classmate said after lecture, breathless in a way that suggested rehearsal. We're doing a study session tonight. Jake's place. You should come. Everyone is. The phrasing was careful, inclusive, safe. I heard the trap click shut the moment he spoke. Decline, and I would be labeled difficult. Antisocial. The problem student who couldn't integrate. Accept, and I would be stepping into Jake's territory, surrounded by people already aligned with him. A controlled environment. Child's play. I'll be there, I said. Relief crossed his face, quickly followed by something else. Apprehension, as if my agreement had shifted the balance in a way he hadn't anticipated. Jake's apartment confirmed everything. It was expensive without warmth. Dark furniture. Sharp edges. No personal touches. Everything curated to project restraint and power rather than comfort. A place meant to intimidate subtly, to remind guests whose space they occupied. People crowded it quickly. Drinks in hand. Music too loud. Laughter exaggerated, brittle. Everyone performing ease. This is no study session, but a place to get drunk and wasted. Jake noticed me the instant I entered. He didn't greet me. Instead, he raised his voice slightly, just enough to carry. That's Liam, the guy who likes correcting people, he said, tone casual, dismissive. A few people laughed. Too fast. Too eager. I set my bag down calmly. Accuracy tends to offend those invested in being wrong. The laughter stuttered. Jake smiled. His eyes didn't. A drink appeared in my hand moments later. Whiskey. Strong. The scent hit first. I set it down untouched. Jake watched the movement closely. Not drinking? He asked, leaning against the counter like he owned the air around him. No. Scared you'll loosen up? I don't lose control. He laughed louder than necessary. Man, you're intense. Yes. The word landed flat. Heavy. He changed tactics. So, what do you actually do for fun? He said, crossing his arms, subtly blocking space. Bait. I study patterns, people, systems, weak points. I replied. The room went quiet. Jake chuckled. Jesus. You hear yourself. I do. The laughter that followed was sparse. Nervous. People started leaving earlier than planned. Excuses were offered. Phones checked. Jackets grabbed. Jake didn't stop them. His attention had narrowed. It was on me. The next test was academic. A group project reassigned without explanation. Roles redistributed conveniently. I was given the most labor-intensive section, the shortest deadline, and no opportunity to present findings. Sabotage dressed as cooperation. I said nothing. I worked alone. Late into the night. I dismantled the framework entirely, corrected flawed assumptions, rebuilt the model, and annotated every error with citations explaining why the original approach would not survive peer review. Then I submitted it directly to the professor. I copied the group. The consequences were immediate. In class, the professor praised the submission's clarity and rigor. "Who prepared this section?" he asked. Jake looked at me. I raised my hand. Approval flickered across the professor's face. "Excellent work. You should lead the next phase." Jake's jaw tightened. That was when the bullying stopped pretending. Questions designed to undermine rather than understand. Comments masked as jokes. Interruptions timed precisely to break momentum. I responded once each time. Calmly. Precisely. Then disengaged. The room began to notice. Jake's authority didn't erode because I challenged him. It eroded because I didn't need to. Authority decays fastest when it fails publicly without resistance. That was when he escalated physically. The hallway outside the seminar room was narrow. Poor lighting. Cameras positioned badly. I felt the shift before it happened. A shoulder slammed into mine from behind. Hard. I hit the wall. Breath ripped from my lungs. Pain flared along my ribs, sharp and immediate. Someone laughed. "Watch where you're going," a voice said. I straightened slowly, forcing air back into my lungs. Jake stood a few feet away, expression mildly curious. Two of his friends flanked him, bodies angled to block traffic. "Accidents happen," he said lightly. "Yes?" I replied evenly, pain burning with every breath. "They often repeat." His smile sharpened. They did. 2 days later, a shove on the stairs. My foot missed a step. Pain exploded through my ankle as I caught the railing, barely stopping myself from falling. Laughter echoed above me. No witnesses willing to speak. Then a drink spilled deliberately across my notes. A chair yanked back too suddenly. Elbows where space should have been. Measured damage. Plausible deniability. I didn't report it. Not yet. The confrontation came after evening seminar. Jake blocked the exit with his body. Casual. Precise. The hallway emptied quickly. "You're persistent," he said. "So are you. You think this makes you strong? Letting things happen?" His gaze flicked to my bandaged ankle. "I think it clarifies intent," I replied. His hand shot out, gripping my collar and slamming me back against the wall. The impact rattled my teeth. Pain tore through my shoulder. "You don't get to look down on me," he said quietly. I didn't struggle. I met his eyes. The fire there was no longer hidden. "You're mistaken. I'm not looking down," I said calmly. His grip tightened. "For someone so smart, you don't know when to kneel," he hissed. The word hung between us. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my injured foot down, steadying myself without breaking eye contact. "I don't kneel, I remember," I said. Something flickered across his face. Not anger, unease. He released me abruptly, stepping back as if he'd touched something unstable. "This isn't over," he said. "No," I agreed. I walked past him without waiting. My body hurt. My ribs ached. My ankle throbbed. But the board was clear now. Jake Cross wasn't testing me to win. He was testing how far he could go without consequences. And I had just learned exactly where to apply them. Chapter 5, Forced Proximity. The university said it was for balance. That was the word they used. Balanced skill sets, balanced personalities, balanced leadership exposure. What it meant was simple. They wanted to see which of us would bend. Jake Cross and I were assigned to the same project. Same lab rotation. Same weekly meetings. Same deliverables. Too many shared spaces to be coincidence. When institutions want control, they compress distance. Jake arrived early the first morning. He always did when something mattered. He stood at the lab bench like it belonged to him, sleeves rolled up, watch glinting under the lights. The equipment was expensive. So was everything else about him. The confidence, the ease, the assumption that the world would move if he leaned on it. He looked up when I entered. "Well, this should be interesting," he said lightly. "For someone," I replied. He smiled, slow and deliberate. "You don't miss, do you?" The lab filled gradually. Other students came in quieter than usual, eyes flicking between us. They had already learned what standing too close to friction felt like. Jake didn't wait for consensus. I'll handle methodology, Liam can do data gathering, he said, already moving papers around. No, I will handle analysis because I'm better at it, I said. The room went still. Jake turned his head slowly, like someone surprised a thing talked back. You don't get to assign yourself roles, he said. I just did. A few people shifted. Someone cleared their throat. No one intervened. Jake stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough that it felt private even with witnesses. You should be careful. People who refuse to cooperate don't last long here, he said. I'm not refusing, I'm cooperating. In the best way I can, I replied. His smile tightened. We worked, or tried to. The space was too small. Every movement required negotiation. Jake made sure it was always his terms. Standing too close, reaching past me instead of asking, letting his shoulder brush mine and not apologizing. I didn't move. The first time my elbow clipped his wrist, he laughed like it amused him. The second time, he didn't. You don't make space, he said. I occupy it, I replied. That annoyed him more than open defiance would have. By the second week, the tactics changed. He stopped pushing physically and started offering things. You ever been to my place? He asked casually one afternoon, leaning back in his chair. Top floor, private terrace. City looks different when you're above it. No, I said. You should come sometime. Connections show up when you least expect them. I could introduce you to people who matter. He paused. I already know who matters, I replied. His eyes flicked to me, sharp. And who's that? Myself. He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. You know, guys like you usually burn out. Too rigid. Too proud. This place rewards flexibility. He said, lowering his voice again. Does it? Or does it reward obedience? I asked. His jaw tightened. The offers kept coming. Access to private study resources. A chance to co-author something that would get attention. A summer placement he casually mentioned having influence over. Each one framed as generosity. Each one carrying a price. You don't have to fight every room you enter, he said one evening as we packed up. You could walk in protected. Protected by what? I asked. By me. I looked at him then. Really looked. And when the protection ends? I asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It wouldn't. That was the lie. The tension peaked during the third lab session. The others were late. A scheduling error. Just the two of us in the room. Equipment humming softly. The door shutting with a heavy click behind them. Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You enjoy this, he said. Clarity, yes, I replied. You enjoy making people feel small. I enjoy watching men reveal themselves. He stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. I could make your life very easy or very difficult, he said. That's true of most men with money. It's never been impressive, I said. His eyes darkened. You don't move no matter what I do, he said. I don't respond to pressure, only intent, I replied. He leaned in, close enough that the air between us tightened. Close enough that lesser men would have stepped back. I didn't. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Not anger, frustration, something hungry. Then he straightened abruptly, stepping away like he'd touched a live wire. This isn't over, he said. No, it isn't, I agreed. When the others finally arrived, the room felt different. Charged, like a line had been crossed without witnesses. Forced proximity hadn't softened anything. It had stripped the conflict bare. Jake Cross wasn't trying to outthink me anymore. He was trying to buy me, and when that failed, I knew what would come next. Chapter 6, The First Forced Kiss. The confrontation was inevitable. It arrived wearing the disguise of routine, a disagreement over procedural timing, a scheduling conflict framed as administrative necessity, a professor's thinly veiled attempt to see which of us would bend if pressed hard enough. We were sent to retrieve equipment from storage. Together, alone. The corridor beneath the lab was narrow and unfinished, concrete walls sweating faint moisture, the ceiling low enough to feel oppressive. The university's polished professionalism did not extend this far underground. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, uneven and flickering. The door shut behind us with a dull, echoing thud. Jake stopped walking. I heard it before I saw it. The shift in his weight, the deliberate stillness. So, how long were you planning to keep pretending this is just about work? He said, turning slowly. I didn't stop. It is about work. No, it stopped being that weeks ago, he said. I continued forward, forcing the issue, forcing him to either move or collide. He didn't. I halted an inch from him, looked up. If you have something to say, say it. I told him. The charm was gone. Up close, the control he normally wore like armor showed strain. His jaw was clenched hard enough to ache. His hands flexed, then stilled, as if gripping something invisible. You don't react, no matter what I do. I push, corner you, I provoke you, and you just stand there. He said. That is a choice, I replied. You don't flinch. You don't step back. You don't even look impressed. Those are not obligations. His breath left him in a short, humorless laugh. You make people feel small, do you know that? He asked quietly. I am not responsible for other men's insecurities. That was when he grabbed me. Not violently. Not yet. His hand closed around my wrist and pinned it against the wall. The pressure was firm, possessive. A test. A demand for reaction. Pain sparked up my arm where bone met concrete. I didn't struggle. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Let go, I said. He didn't. Something in him finally fractured. The composure he had held together through weeks of calculation splintered into something raw and ungoverned. His grip tightened reflexively, then loosened as if he realized too late what he was doing. This isn't how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to push back. You're supposed to get angry. He said, voice low and uneven. I am angry. I simply don't waste it. I said calmly. His eyes searched my face desperately now. Not for fear. For confirmation. You look at me like I'm already decided, like you've already judged the outcome. He said. I have. That was the moment he lost restraint entirely. He leaned in and kissed me. It was abrupt. Misaligned. Too hard. Not exploratory. Not tender. An act driven by frustration and impulse rather than desire. A line crossed because he didn't know how else to regain control. For a fraction of a second, the world compressed into sensation. The wall cold at my back. His grip on my wrist. The undeniable reality of being touched without consent. I did not freeze. I did not reciprocate. I placed my free hand flat against his chest and pushed. Not violently. Not panicked. Decisively. He stumbled back a step, shock flashing across his face. The contact broke. The air rushed back into the space between us. I straightened my jacket. Control yourself, I said coldly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jake stared at me as if I had struck him. Then he laughed. It wasn't soft. It wasn't kind. His eyes were bright now, unfocused, almost fevered. Whatever mask he had worn before was gone completely. Jesus, you really don't get it, he said. I get it perfectly. You mistook resistance for invitation, I replied. His breathing was uneven. He took a step forward, then stopped himself, fists clenching at his sides like he no longer trusted them. You should be furious, you should be shaken, he said. I am neither. That seemed to unnerve him more than anger ever could. You think that makes you untouchable, he said. No, it makes you transparent, I answered. His gaze dropped briefly to my mouth, then snapped back to my eyes as if ashamed of the impulse. The desire there was no longer concealed. It burned openly now, tangled with irritation and something dangerously close to admiration. This isn't over, he said. I know. I stepped past him and reached for the door. For a moment, I expected him to grab me again. He didn't. The door opened with a metallic groan. Light spilled in from the stairwell, breaking the enclosed tension. As I walked away, I felt his attention like a physical weight against my back. Heavier than before, focused, possessive in a way that had nothing to do with affection. He had crossed a line. and in doing so revealed something essential. Jake Cross was no longer trying to dominate me. He was unraveling. And men like that do not retreat. They fixate. Chapter 7 Cracks. Jake Cross became predictable. That was the first sign something had gone wrong for him. Men like Jake thrived on reaction. On chaos they could direct. On opponents who responded emotionally, who rushed, who tried to win loudly. When those things were denied, they grew careless. He escalated openly now. No more subtlety. No more testing. He challenged me mid-lecture with questions designed less to understand than to corner. He interrupted presentations under the guise of clarification. His tone sharp, eyes already daring the room to side with him. I dismantled every attempt. Quietly, when he questioned my data, I arrived with citations prepared days in advance. When he implied my conclusions were flawed, I invited the professor to verify them independently. When he attempted to frame disagreement as arrogance, I responded once precisely, then disengaged. No defensiveness. No repetition. The room did the rest. He began losing ground. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would inspire sympathy. Just enough. Enough that people noticed he wasn't always right anymore. That his confidence now required effort. That his certainty came a beat too late. The cracks appeared first in his temper. Then, unexpectedly, in his behavior toward me. It started with a look. A student laughed too loudly after I corrected a mistake during discussion. Before I could respond, Jake's head snapped up. "That's enough," he said flatly. The laughter died. The room went still. I turned toward him slowly. "You don't speak for me." His jaw tightened. Didn't say I did. But he didn't move. His body remained angled between me and the others, stance subtly defensive. Instinctive. The contradiction did not go unnoticed. Another time, someone muttered a comment in the hallway as I passed. Jake was already there, stepping into their space before the insult had fully formed. "Walk," he said quietly. They did. I stopped a few steps away. That wasn't necessary. He looked at me then, irritation flashing. "You don't need to hear that garbage. I decide what I need." Silence stretched. Then he exhaled sharply and stepped back, rolling his shoulders as if shedding tension that didn't belong to him. The mixed signals confused everyone. One day he would challenge me aggressively in front of faculty. The next, he would redirect criticism away from me with a single sentence, as if it were nothing. He mocked my restraint publicly, then bristled when anyone else tried the same. Control slipping, focus narrowing. "Dean Hart," I reminded myself, "pay attention." So I did. Jake began inserting himself into my routine. Not clumsily, not overtly. He appeared in study spaces I hadn't mentioned. Took the seat beside mine in lectures with dozens of open alternatives. Fell into step with me between buildings without invitation, matching my pace exactly. He never touched me again. That restraint cost him. I could see it in the way his hands clenched when he stood too close. In the way his gaze lingered a second too long before snapping away. In the tension that followed him like a static charge. Others noticed too. Whispers shifted tone. "What's his deal with Liam? They're always together. Did something happen?" Jake hated speculation he couldn't control. One evening, he waited for me outside the lab. Not blocking the exit. Not cornering. Waiting. That alone was different. "We need to talk," he said. "No," I replied, walking past him. He followed easily, long strides matching mine without crowding. "You can't keep pretending nothing's happening." "I am not pretending." "Then what are you doing?" "Observing." He laughed quietly without humor. "You really think you're above all of this?" "I am above being owned." He stopped walking. The word landed harder than I had intended. "You think that's what I want?" he asked. "Yes." Silence stretched between us, heavy and exposed. Then, quietly, "I want you under control." There it was. Not affection. Not apology. Possession stripped of pretense. "I don't bend," I said. "You would, for the right person," he replied. I turned to face him fully. No, you won't be able to do that. So stay away from me, I said. His breath caught. Just slightly. I could make things easier for you, protection. Influence. You wouldn't have to fight every room you walk into. He said, I am not fighting, you are. And don't you think that I know about your little tricks? I said. Something in his expression hardened. Not rage. Not yet. Personal. This isn't over, he said. The words were no longer a threat. They were a vow. I know, I replied. I walked away without looking back. Behind me, Jake remained where he was, surrounded by the structures that had always obeyed him, and unable, for the first time, to reach the one thing that would not yield. He would not accept that easily. Men like him never do. They either learn restraint, or they break trying to enforce it. Chapter 8: The Devil Revealed. It started with a message. Not from Jake himself. From his people. The ones who ran errands, took orders without question, who existed solely to make his world run smoothly. Professor Hall has moved the lecture. You're required in 3B, it said. No explanation. No room to refuse. Just coercion disguised as authority. I didn't need to ask who arranged it. The hall was enormous. Tiered seating rose like steps into shadow. A faint hum from the projector filling the room with oppressive white noise. Lights were dim, almost theatrical. Fewer exits. Space compressed. Jake was already there. Not at the podium. Not in the crowd. On the stage. Towering. Hands clasped behind him. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Liam Hart, glad you could join us, he said, voice carrying across the empty rows. I didn't sit. Didn't flinch. You're late, he continued, pacing slowly. Each step calculated, each movement deliberate. Predators walk like that. The lecture started before you noticed, I replied evenly. He laughed softly. No warmth. No, you're late for acknowledging reality. You forced me to escalate. I arched a brow. I haven't done anything you couldn't handle. He stopped mid-step. The smile vanished. No, you escalated. By refusing. By standing upright. By not kneeling. He said low. I smiled faintly, flat and unamused. Kneeling isn't in my vocabulary. That's your problem, he said, voice sharpened, teeth showing slightly. You've made this impossible for me. Every influence I wielded, every plan, wasted because of you. You're mine to break. The hall seemed smaller now, walls pressing closer. His underlings lingered at the doors, silent but immovable, eyes trained on me. No escape. No witnesses. Only observation. I did not move. I never moved unless I intended to. Jake stepped closer, the heat radiating from him unmistakable. He stopped just shy of touching. You make it impossible to control anything, impossible to live, he said. Then stop trying to own me, I replied. Calm. Precise. The words cut through the air between us like steel. His laugh was short, sharp, a sound that didn't carry amusement. Oh, I've tried. But everything about you, every glance, every word, every silence, it mocks me. You resist, and it's all your fault. He slammed a hand against the podium beside me. Papers skittered across the stage. The underlings flinched ever so slightly, registering the tension, but did nothing. You think I can't break you? He hissed, stepping in closer. You think you can outcalculate me, outmaneuver me, outthink me. But you don't understand what it costs to be denied, Hart. What it does to a man. I understand exactly. I've already decided the outcome, I said. My tone was cool, detached. Something inside him snapped. Possession, obsession, rage. It poured from him in waves, uncontrolled and raw. He lunged, not with a punch, not with a threat, with everything he had bottled up. His mouth collided with mine. Hard, raw, desperate. A kiss meant to punish, to overwhelm, to force submission. I reacted instantly. I didn't return it. I didn't flinch. I didn't panic. My forearms pressed against his chest. Not violently, but with enough force to create breathing space. His hands gripped my shoulders, then my arms, anchoring me like I could escape physically. You think this changes anything? You think you can stand there and not feel me? He hissed, teeth brushing my ear. I feel exactly what you are, a man unaccustomed to being denied. That is not my problem, I said, voice cold, cutting through the haze. The kiss ended, not because he wanted it to, but because the force of resistance had pushed him back. His chest heaved, his face flushed, eyes bright with desire, frustration, obsession. You don't bend for anyone, he spat, stepping back, breathing harsh, gaze locked on mine like I was the axis of his world. I am, I said simply. And you are exposed. His underlings shifted uneasily, sensing the shift, their obedience suddenly fraught with tension they could not manage. You're mine to fix, he said finally, voice low, dangerous. You won't kneel. You won't yield. And now. He leaned in again, almost too close, the air between us vanishing. Now it's my fault. You make me this way. I looked at him steadily. No flinch. No tremor. Then blame yourself. I've done nothing to you but exist, I said. He froze. For a fraction of a second, it seemed like he might retreat. But the obsession wouldn't let him. He stepped closer again. I didn't move. The crowd of desks, chairs, and empty space between us didn't matter. The hall had become ours. Everything I have, everything I am, and it isn't enough, it should be. And it's your fault, heart. All of it. Because you won't kneel. You won't give in, he said, almost quietly, more to himself than me. Then louder. You're blaming me for your lack of control. Not because I provoked you, but because you chose to act on it, I said. His eyes darkened. Something dangerous. Something uncontainable. He stepped forward and kissed me again. Hard. Raw. Desperate. Not passion. Not desire. Rage. Obsession. Punishment. I reacted the same. Not violently. Not fearfully. I just existed. My hands pressed against him, my body firm, unyielding. He staggered back, exhaling in frustration. The hall was silent now. Empty rows stretched above us like witnesses. You think you're untouchable, he said, voice low, dangerous, uneven. You think resistance is clever. You think defiance is charming. But it's infuriating. I think it's natural and necessary, I replied. His jaw flexed. His eyes burned. He wanted chaos, and I gave him structure. He wanted submission, and I gave him stillness. He wanted surrender, and I gave him the mirror. For a long moment he stared. The underlings shifted, uncomfortable, powerless. Even Jake seemed aware that he had crossed a line. Finally, he stepped back, breathing harsh. You don't even understand what you've done to me, and I can't stand it, he said, voice breaking slightly. I understand perfectly. You feel like losing control, and can't accept that fact, I said. I walked past him and out of the lecture hall. His gaze followed me like a weight pressing into my back, a reminder that he would not forget. That day it became clear. Jake Cross wasn't just dangerous because of wealth, influence, or physical presence. He was dangerous because he had lost himself to obsession, and I was the only one who could hold the mirror. And I would never kneel.